What do you want to be when you grow up? It's a question so many of us were asked as kids. One that sparked excitement, endless possibilities, and dreams of what our future could hold. For those with access to education, school became the launchpad, a place where ideas took shape, skills were honed, and passions turned into purpose. Learning gave us the power to shape our futures. Yet today, 120 million girls around the world are denied this chance. And when that happens, we all lose. Throughout history, we have seen that when girls have knowledge, they don't just change their own lives, they become a force that challenges inequality, strengthens communities, and solves problems that drive progress. Because girls inspire other girls, and when that happens, the world grows into a better place. This is Watch Her Cook.
I'm Cassie.
And I'm Danielle.
Welcome back to Watch Her Cook, a podcast dedicated to sharing the incredible lives of women who have taken their power back throughout history.
Well, in my little intro there, we talked a little bit about school and the importance of school. So let's talk about our own experiences really quick, especially with early education, because I think those are really formative years that a lot of us reflect back on and can kind of trace where our lives have gone based on what we loved or maybe didn't love about what we learned in school. So do you have anything that you look back on and reflect and say, wow, that's where my first introduction to my interest now took hold?
Yeah, actually, I do have an origin story.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so to this day, I think elementary school is my favorite, which I think maybe a lot of people can relate to because it's probably the most fun years of schooling. Also, maybe some of the most awkward. But I realized pretty young that I was really interested in history. And I think it was fourth grade where we were given the book Night by Elie Wiesel, which is a Holocaust book. And I remember reading that and being like, wow, this is history that I didn't know. And it was talking about landscapes and countries I didn't know existed outside of my little bubble. And that was my moment in school where I was like, I really love history and I need to learn more. And from then forward, other people would be reading, Captain Underpants with all the other kids or Goodnight Moon. And I would be sitting there with some type of historical disaster book at 9 years old, reading it at night. So that was where I really discovered my love of history and just people. More specifically, I loved books that surrounded people who are really important in history and who overcame really difficult situations. And that was what I was drawn to and have continued to be.
And that's why we're friends. That's why we found each other later in life. I just knew that about you the second I met you.
I was like, this girl's weird.
This girl loved historical accounts in third grade. And I just know that.
You could just sense it.
I could, yeah.
I'd love to hear your origin story because I know that we have similar interests in different ways.
Well, it's so funny because I've been thinking about that. And I don't know if I have a particular story like you do, but I do have a very vivid memory of one of my earliest projects in school. And it must have been around second or third grade. I remember my teacher's name. Her name was Miss Quinn. And it was
Shout out Miss Quinn.
Miss Quinn. Hey. She was great. And I remember we've talked about this before, but we were each assigned a person and you had to do a project on them and present, to the class about their lives and things like that. And I'm pretty sure it was my mom's idea. Instead of like a diorama or something, she used a 2-liter bottle of soda and filled it with sand and like dressed the bottle to look like this person. And the person was Amelia Earhart. And I did her life story and touched upon her disappearance and all of that. And that really got me interested in more of like, I guess, just like the mystery of the unknown. of like what happened to this person. There's so many theories, there's so many different explanations, and I think that really opened my eyes to we don't know what happened to a lot of people throughout history, or there's a lot of questions surrounding certain events and they're still open for discussion. And I think that was really my first introduction to that type of thing. And I was just, because up until that point, you're like, every question has an answer. And here's how you get to that answer. And then that story and learning about her life, and especially the end of it, I was like, wait, so we don't have all the answers. So that means there's still more to learn. And I really loved that.
I can relate to that really, really well. And you're drawn to the mystery of not knowing but wanting. It feels like you have a very investigative mind of I like mysteries because I want to try and form my own opinions on what this could have been and create this narrative in your own head of where this could go.
Yeah, for sure.
I also like that you brought up Amelia Earhart because I feel like she would be a really good person to add to the podcast.
Definitely. Let's add her to the list.
Yeah.
That would be a full circle moment for sure. Today, we're sharing the extraordinary story of Malala Yousafzai, a young girl who risked her life to defend every girl's right to an education while living under Taliban rule in Pakistan. Her bravery sparked a global movement, and to this day, she remains a powerful voice for change, fighting to ensure that every girl has access to learning.
I'm really excited for this one, so let's dive into her story.
Malala Yousafzai was born on July 12, 1997 in Mingora, the largest city in the Swat Valley of Pakistan. She was named after Malala of Maiwan, a courageous Afghan hero who played a pivotal role in rallying troops during the Second Anglo-Afghan War in the 19th century. She grew up in a Pashtun family, an ethnic group known for their rich cultural traditions, and was raised by her parents, Ziauddin Yousafzai and Tor Pakai Yousafzai. Her father was an education activist who co-founded and ran Kushal Public School, a chain of low-cost private schools that sought to provide quality education to children, particularly girls, in the Swat Valley.
From a young age, Malala displayed an insatiable thirst for knowledge. While most girls in Swat were expected to stay at home and learn domestic skills, Malala's world was filled with books, studies, and dreams of a future beyond societal limitations. Her father's influence was instrumental in shaping her belief in the power of education. Having grown up with 5 sisters, none of whom were given the opportunity to pursue an education, her father was determined to ensure that Malala would be, quote, a girl who is known by her own name.
When Malala was born, her father's cousin presented him with a family tree that stretched back 400 years, listing only the names of men. Her father took a pen, drew a line from his own name, and wrote Malala. The disapproval on his cousin's face was immediate, but Ziauddin stood firm in his belief that Malala's name and her legacy would shine on its own.
In the early 2000s, life in Swat took a turn for the worse. In 2002, Fazat Hayat, more commonly known by his pseudonym Mullah Fazlullah, became the leader of the Tehreek-e-Nafaz-e-Sharia-e-Mohammadi, also referred to as TNSM. TNSM was an Islamic extreme militant group that swore an oath of loyalty to the Pakistani Taliban. Fazlullah built a loyal support base in the following years by broadcasting sermons on an illegal FM radio channel, which became known as Radio Mullah. Using this platform, he spread his extremist ideology, advocating for the strict implementation of Sharia law, a legal system based on Islamic principles and teachings, which can have dangerous ramifications when interpreted in radical ways. He called for the elimination of what he deemed sources of sin, such as music, dancing, and modern entertainment. His followers enforced these beliefs by burning TVs, CDs, and other electronics, as well as attacking the shops that sold them.
But Fazlullah's ambitions stretched further. He set forth a strict agenda to end female education. His message was clear: women belonged in the home, not in the classroom. In early 2007, schools became targets of destruction. Principals received threats warning them to shut down or face the consequences. Many complied, and some teachers fled, fearing for their lives. But this was only the beginning.
In July 2007, a radical Islamic school was raided by the Pakistani military. This attack came to be known as the Siege of Lal Masjid, which translates to the Siege of the Red Mosque, leaving at least 102 people dead. Outraged, Fazlullah merged forces with feared militant leader Baytullah Musad, forming the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, also known as the TTP. The group would soon become Pakistan's most dangerous terrorist organization, plunging the region into a new era of violence.
Swat, which was once called the Switzerland of the East, known for its lush forests, snow-capped mountains, and natural beauty, had become a war zone. Public punishments became common, including flogging, public beheadings, and suicide attacks, and women were not allowed to leave their homes unless escorted by male family members. In September 2008, when Malala was 11 years old, she joined her father at a local press club and gave her first speech, titled, "How Dare the Taliban Take Away My Right to an Education?" The speech was televised throughout the country.
11 years old giving a speech like that on national television, too, where everyone's seeing you say that. And this most dangerous terrorist group that's ever existed is the person that you're speaking out against at 11 years old.
It gives me chills, honestly. And we do have to go back. I'd like to go back just a second to her dad, because she joined her dad, at this local press club, and going back to how he was so adamant about being the one in his family to kind of change it up, change the narrative, change how people recognized individuals in their family. Like they, going back to the family tree and how only the men were recognized for centuries.
Right.
And he's like, nope, it ends with me and it starts with my daughter.
Yeah, he said, even though obviously his cousin disapproved of that moment where he wrote her name down, he didn't care. It was, this is my daughter. I know that she's destined for more. I want her to have an education. And he, even though he knew that his opinion was not the favorable one, he wasn't afraid to say it, which clearly is a huge influence for her to feel confident to stand up on national television and say, how dare you take my education away? And without that support, I doubt that would even be possible, especially in this time. So, and I was just thinking back on another thing that you said in this, or I said, that they considered a sin was dancing, music, CDs, entertainment. And to have such an extremist group that doesn't want you to enjoy the smaller things in life that make life enjoyable, that is it's such a telling moment in whatever ideology this is, that this is really scary. This is controlling. This is taking away the things in life that give you joy. There's nothing else to that, right? There's no other reason to take something like that away than to want to suppress a group of people.
Absolutely. And if you think of, not only is this young girl standing up on national television, and it's in the title, "How Dare the Taliban Take Away?" Like her finger is pointed right to them.
She doesn't shy away from pointing them out.
And this organization that's not only taking away, like things that bring joy and entertainment, it's to the point that they're killing people in public.
Right. It's not just some small thing.
This isn't like, oh, you shouldn't do that. It's, okay, if you do that, you're going to pay with your life and everyone will know it.
Yes. And she's going out saying these things, knowing, she's living this, right? She's seen it. She knows what's happening in town, and she knows what's happening with this militant group. And still, despite that, she's willing to stand up and say these things, which is incredible. And something I can't help but do when I hear this story is think of myself at 11 years old, right? Mm-hmm. And I was never doing something like this, right? Could I picture myself standing on national television to advocate for something so scary? No, because I've never been in that position. But it breaks my heart thinking of her at 11 years old needing to.
Yeah, and the repercussions just couldn't be more severe.
Right.
It doesn't get worse than that.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. And just to be a girl, a child in this position where you have to stand up for yourself in this way, or the alternative of that is, of course, complying to this awful regime that's happening. And it's just, I just put myself in her shoes so much as an 11-year-old girl at one point in my life, to have to be living like this and to have to fight for education, and I think that's part of why this story is so important, because we have to remember that not everyone has these rights to education, and people do fight and people do lose their lives, and never give up your right to education, because it's so, so important, and which is what we're going to dive into in this story. And I think as everyone listens on, you're going to learn a lot about Malala and everything that she went through.
And just how far she went.
And how far-reaching her voice was. In October 2008, the Pakistani military launched Operation Rahi-Haq, also known as the First Battle of Swat, in hopes of regaining control, but the operation was unsuccessful. By January 2009, the ban was official. Girls were forbidden from attending school. Her father continued to publicly advocate for girls' right to education. This same year, BBC Urdu contacted him and asked permission for Malala to write an anonymous blog detailing the challenges girls were facing in Swat under the Taliban. Her father agreed, and she began writing under the pen name Gul Makai, which translates to cornflower, a heroine from the Pakistani folktale.
This blog garnered international attention. People around the world were able to witness the struggles of daily life in Swat from someone who was experiencing it in real time. It was a dangerous move, but it marked the beginning of Malala's journey as an outspoken advocate for girls' education globally. One of her entries said, quote, "The night was filled with the noise of artillery fire, and I woke up 3 times. But since there was no school, I got up later at 10 a.m. Afterwards, my friend came over and we discussed our homework. Today is the last day before the Taliban's edict comes into effect, and my friend was discussing homework as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Today, I also read my diary written for the BBC in Urdu. My mother liked my pen name, Gul Makai. I also like the name because my real name means grief-stricken." The blog ran from January 2009 to March of 2009.
And again, she's so young and she's writing this blog entry detailing what she's going through. And just to think, the night was filled with the noise of artillery fire. I woke up 3 times. A child in this, there's war going on outside her bedroom. She's detailing what's happening and she's putting it out there for the world. And I think it's really beautiful, the pen name that she chose, and the fact that she's doing it behind this anonymous door. So hopefully people won't know it's her, because the repercussions for that are extremely dangerous. But even with that pen name, it's so dangerous. If anyone found out, you mentioned earlier what's happening to these people, and her father gives her permission, and she's doing it knowing that this is a life or death situation.
Yeah. But again, the kind of grabbing the torch and carrying it, like, this is important that the world knows, right? Like, people are so invested in this blog because they haven't been shown an inside look before, directly from someone experiencing all of this unfold, and writing under this pen name, in hopes that it will provide complete anonymity. Like, you hopefully are disguised behind it. That really gives you the freedom to be unfiltered and say exactly what's happening, so that the truth gets out there in its entirety, versus going through some sort of filter or different lens, or, just, it's not sugar-coated in any way.
You don't have to worry about someone judging you because they know you're the one writing it.
Mm-hmm.
You can write whatever you want.
Right.
Well, soon after, in 2009, Malala's family made the brave decision to reveal her identity.
Oh.
Malala and her father participated in a New York Times documentary, Class Dismissed in the Swat Valley, which captured poignant footage from the final day of school before the Taliban's ban went into effect. When her father was asked why he allowed Malala to take part in such a risky endeavor, his response was always, "We needed to stand up." Her father also believed that because she was a young girl, Malala was not in immediate danger at the time.
In February 2009, the Pakistani government announced a ceasefire agreement with the TNSM, which would allow the implementation of Sharia law in the Malakand division of Pakistan in exchange for the group halting their violent activities. This solution was deeply divisive, with opposition from both the Pakistani government and the public, who saw it as a dangerous compromise that could grow the Taliban's militant influence. And it wasn't long before it was made clear that the Taliban were not going to hold up their end of the agreement. In response, the Pakistani military launched Operation Rahi-Rast, also known as the Second Battle of Swat, in an attempt to restore justice.
In May 2009, 2 million people fled their homes. Children and women faced particular hardships as the Taliban targeted and destroyed schools, specifically those for girls. During the conflict, approximately 120 girls' schools and 80 other schools were demolished. 8,000 female educators abandoned their teaching positions, and 80,000 students were forced to withdraw from colleges and schools. By this point, it is estimated that 400 schools had been damaged or destroyed since the Taliban had taken over.
By June 2009, the military declared Swat had been cleared of the Taliban presence, but life remained difficult, especially for women and girls. Swat, which had once been a center of tourism, had been left in a state of devastation. The infrastructure had been reduced to rubble, electricity and water were limited, and people were left with psychological scars, and the fight was not over yet.
When we spoke about how there was a ceasefire that was going on, it was almost this glimmer of hope, but then it was only if you agree to what we've been trying to enforce this entire time, which I understand why you would agree to a ceasefire, because you already have your people who are being hung publicly and you have all this detrimental stuff that's already happening. It's like, please stop. But at the same time, that clearly sparked this whole new thing of, no, we're not doing a ceasefire. Yes, we're doing Sharia law, and we're destroying hundreds of schools. So now not only do we not want women to go to school or girls to go to school, but we've actually destroyed every single building that they were able to go to, and we've removed every female teacher.
It's so devastating. Not only because we're talking about devastation at multiple levels, right? Not only the overarching, like, physical devastation to the land and to infrastructure and just your way of life. And then there's the devastation to access to education, and not only where to go for this education, but who to get education from. And then there's the psychological devastation of everything that you're going through day to day, and all of it's just, this is so far reaching, and it impacts so many facets of life and is so disproportionately targeted at women and their ability to access education, which clearly is the key to so many other things. I mean, without an education, life is so much harder. And that's why so many people fight for education.
Well, I just think of my own life. I put myself in this position, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how has education helped me? And you start from this elementary school level, which you look at Malala, she's 11. What was I learning then? I was learning reading, writing skills. I was learning how to do math. I was learning things that I have used throughout my entire life. I was learning history, important history. I was learning geography. I was learning about the world, and if I didn't have those things, there are so many things about my life that would be really difficult today, right? Getting a job would be hard if I wasn't literate. If I didn't know the histories within the world, it would be hard to understand politics today. Mm-hmm. There are just so many things that education is important for throughout your daily life, throughout your career, family life. You know, it's just,
Well, you are learning all of these foundational skills
yeah.
and things that we take for granted now. And I can't help but reflect back to my own education and thinking of, especially during this time, right? Like that age, and then kind of going into early high school years of sitting here from somebody who was fortunate enough to, school was never a question. I never had to fight to go to school. And sometimes I dragged my feet about it. And so did a lot of my friends.
And
And
so did I.
right. And it's just like, oh, I don't want to go to school. School's a waste of time. School's this, school's that. But when you really zoom out and look at it on a broader scale, like this, we are so fortunate to have had the opportunity to receive an education. And whether or not you choose to go on to higher education or not, like that's your choice. But a lot of people throughout the world, like this story is so important to share because I think a lot of us in certain circumstances and times are just like, we don't realize how fortunate we were, you know?
Right.
And it's important to know that this is something that people have risked their lives for.
And continue to risk their lives for. I think it's also really important. I mean, we're talking about Malala, and this story took place 2009, 2012 timeframe. But these are fights that are still very much happening in other countries today, and are still being implemented. And we have our education and we're able to have it here, but it's important to remember that not everywhere does. And even wherever you are, you should fight for your education and the ability to learn whatever you want to learn.
Right. And we're going to talk about just how dangerous
Yes.
it is.
Because this gets a lot more dangerous for Malala. In 2012, when Malala was just 15, a masked gunman boarded Malala's school bus and aggressively asked the question, "Who is Malala?" All that could be heard next was the deafening crack of a gunshot as a man pulled the trigger pointed at Malala's head. The bullet hit her left temple, grazing her left eye, skull, and brain, lacerating her facial nerve, shattering her eardrum, and breaking her jaw joints.
After the attack, Malala was rushed to the hospital in Pakistan, where she received emergency surgery to remove the bullet that was now lodged in her shoulder. Shortly after, she was airlifted to Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, UK, and miraculously, Malala survived. But she was left with a damaged skull and brain, which was later repaired with a titanium disc, along with the loss of hearing in one ear, which was later treated with a cochlear implant. She detailed in an article that she had no recollection of that day, though her classmate remembers how tightly Malala squeezed her hand in fear.
While Malala lay unconscious, her story was broadcast around the world. Protests were held in Pakistan, London, New York, and beyond, and the United Nations condemned the attack, calling for stronger protections of girls' education. She credits her survival to the people around the world who followed her story, saying, quote, "Without the thousands of letters and offers of support, prayers, and news stories, I might not have received medical care."
The moment of her attack must have been so surreal. I mean, you're on a school bus,
With your classmates.
You're 15 years old and you are a target. You're a target for an assassination.
Yeah. And a militant group enters this bus and specifically asks your name. And you're sitting there with your friends. And not only are you attacked, but your friends watch you be attacked as well. So it's an example that's being set by this extremist group that you cannot voice your opinion and voice advocacy for women's education. But not only that, we have set this example and precedent for everyone surrounding you who also cares about you, that this will happen to them if they try.
Yeah, it was a very public act, right?
Yes.
This wasn't like a covert in her bedroom under the eye of nobody else. Like, they wanted to make a statement, and they wanted to make it on such a public stage that there could be no question about what happened to her and why.
Yeah. And the fact that they had to pretty much put together this covert mission and get her out of Pakistan and fly her to the UK for medical treatment because it was too dangerous there, right? She can't go to a hospital and get treated and have the Taliban outside who control everything and have access to the hospitals. That's such a dangerous situation. So she had to leave, and her story then gained this international attention where people started rallying around her. You know, when the United Nations comes forward and specifically condemns this attack, when they've been doing these attacks to people for years at this point, but they specifically condemn hers, that's when you know that your voice has been heard, not just in Pakistan, but globally.
Yeah, and everyone rallied to support and show up and really just say, like she said, thousands of letters and voices of, we're here, we see you, and we're here to help and guide and support you. And, it made all the difference for her. And she's here today, and she hasn't stopped. In 2013, just 1 year after the attack, Malala and her father co-founded the Malala Fund, an organization dedicated to ensuring every girl receives 12 years of free, safe, and quality education. During her recovery, she explained how she knew she had a choice. She could live a quiet life or make the most of her new life that she had been given.
The organization's approach is to empower changemakers at the local level by investing in what they call the Education Champion Network. These are groups of education advocates and activists who are challenging education policy and understand the unique barriers in the communities. The network provides tailored support to the champions to enhance their ability to lead change, amplifies the champions' cause through media and public engagements so that they can gain access to the decision makers, connects champions at national, regional, and global convenings, and provide investment to support the program and advocacy campaigns. The Malala Fund currently supports 10 countries around the world where girls face significant barriers to education due to gender discrimination, societal factors, and environmental causes, and has invested $47 million towards education initiatives.
Beyond funding, Malala and her team work at the highest levels of government, advocating for policies that put education first. She has stood before world leaders at the United Nations, the G7, and the World Bank, urging them to prioritize girls' education.
On her 16th birthday, she delivered a monumental speech at the UN. A line that I found profound was, "I am here to speak up for the right of education of every child. I want education for the sons and the daughters of all the extremists, especially the Taliban." And I thought that that was just such a moving statement to say, because she says, I want education for the sons and daughters of all the extremists. So all of these parents who are part of the Taliban, she's like, their children need education too, and they need to know they can't be raised just around this.
Yeah, no one is excluded from her desire for everyone to have access to quality education.
Mm-hmm.
Malala's extensive list of honors and awards are both inspiring and well-deserved. These include the National Youth Peace Prize, the Mother Teresa Memorial Award, and the Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought, along with her memoir titled I Am Malala, the Girl Who Stood Up for Education and Was Shot by the Taliban.
In 2014, at age 17, Malala became the youngest person to ever receive the Nobel Peace Prize, alongside Indian education advocate Kailash Satyarthi. Malala's message is simple yet powerful. One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world.
In 2020, Malala graduated from Oxford University, earning a degree in philosophy, politics, and economics, and it is clear that she has no intention of stopping now. From surviving an attack to becoming a global icon for education and equality, Malala's courage, passion, and dedication continue to inspire millions of people around the world. Her belief that education is the key to a better future remains unwavering, and her story reminds us all that one voice, one person, can change the course of history and lead us to a more equal world.
What a good way to end that story.
I know. Okay, can I just say that I knew Malala's name and I could picture her before I knew the details of her actual story. And I think that speaks volumes because she's so prevalent in speaking at all of the, like, I mean, I just listed just some of the places that she is sure to make speeches and really get her voice out there. But I have seen her and snippets of her speeches at all of these global seminars and just her really standing up. And I could just see her at the podium in my mind's eye before I even knew the details of her life story and what led her there. And I just think that's so cool because it's like, usually it's the opposite. It's like you learn about someone and then you're like, oh, there they are. And I recognize them now because I'm familiar with their story. But with her, it's the opposite. And
well, she's such a powerful presence and she has such a big voice that has been seen.
Yeah.
And I love that you say that because I have read her book. And actually, the reason why I read her book was because I was at Barnes and Noble one day and I was walking around just looking for anything. I didn't have anything in particular, just browsing. And from across the way, I saw her book and her face is on it. And it said, I am Malala. And I said, wait a minute, I know who she is. I don't know her story, but I want to. So I went straight for the book, read the back of it and was like, yep, taking this. And then I read it and it was an incredible book. I really encourage everyone listening to read it. It's very eye-opening and she goes deep into her family history and just societal norms at the time. And then, of course, her advocacy after. It's just a really, really eye-opening book.
And the title, like going back to, again, why she likely titled it that. You know, when she was almost killed, the last question she maybe would have ever heard if she didn't survive was, who is Malala? And you know, and now the title of this is I Am Malala. And just kind of that like reclaiming of, it's just like such a power move, you know, it's like a mic drop title. Like I am Malala.
It really is. And remember too, she probably still to this day has a mark on her from the Taliban, you know,
For sure.
You know, she's such an advocate here. And then she even puts in the title, the girl who stood up for education and was shot by the Taliban. So it's like,
I'm going to make this
here.
very clear also. So there's
like,
no
I am
question.
Malala. This is who I am. Yes, it was the Taliban. Yes, I'm standing up to you still. You did almost the worst thing you could have done to me. And I'm still here. I'm still fighting. And you haven't won. And it's just such a powerful, powerful move from... She started as a girl, you know, she's a woman now, and especially in a country that thinks of women as being so small and insignificant and not, especially in this time, or the Taliban view it this way, to come out and be like, none of what you're saying is true. This narrative is not true. And I'm going to fight for women and their right to have education, to be bigger voices, and to have the lives that they deserve.
Yeah, she's just... I am really inspired now to read her book, so you may have to bring it next time you come see me.
Yeah. I mean, I have it on my bookshelf. I will happily give it to you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to watch her cook.
If you're looking to dive a little deeper, we've dropped some sources for you in the description. Let us know what incredible women's stories you'd like to hear next.
And a big shout out to Zickbird Productions, who produces our podcast and helps bring these stories to life. Don't forget to follow us on Watch Her Cook podcast. Leave a review and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Just a reminder, empowered women empower the world. Now let's go cook.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates. so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.